I had an experience, and I've mentioned my daughters, and Jennifer has. I had an experience not long ago, actually just a few weeks ago. My daughter Grace goes to a preschool on Capitol Hill. She goes to the Peabody School, where I take her each morning to her little class up there. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, she was getting ready for school, and when she looked up at me as she was putting her shoes on, she said exactly these words, "I wonder what my day is going to be like." It's a pretty profound question for someone who just turned 5. Within a very few moments after that, these were her exact words. There was a pause, kind of a quiet moment, and she literally stood up and looked at me and she said, "I wonder what my life is going to be like." At 5 years old, kind of a profound question. And so I said, now, where did that come from? But it's a question, I suppose, that I've heard and you've heard many times over, because it's the same question that all parents ask, whether directly or indirectly, about you, about their children, about their families. What's going to happen? What sort of a life are you going to have? What's this country, what's the world going to look like? What are we doing to prepare ourselves so there's an opportunity for all of us to grow and prosper and live in relative peace? The one thing I do know about all of this is that the life that she will lead, the life that all of us hopefully will lead, will depend in no small measure, and very directly, on the decisions that we're about to make. In the brief time, the very brief time that you and I have on this good earth, I believe that every generation has a responsibility to do all they can to get this world right, to make sure that each and every child can grow up and have as beautiful, as passionate, and as meaningful a life as anyone can imagine. In my view, we're not going to get there by being timid or fearful of the future at all. We're only going to get there if we approach the future with confidence, with optimism, and with hope, and also a deep belief that tomorrow will be better. Politics and government and preparation is always about the future. Through the centuries, much of a world held back by tradition watched each generation move this country forward, first to establish a set of moral principles and rules of governance that were revolutionary in their concept and design, to throw off slavery in the mid-part of the 19th century and open our country to millions of immigrants who are coming here, to escape the Depression in the early part of the 20th century, and then to build a middle class and a nation of unparalleled opportunity. It has been anything but a perfect history, as we all know. Many have paid a very high price indeed to get us where we are today. But in the first decade of the 21st century, we seem to have left that great tradition behind, with all of its shortcomings. For 6 years now, in my view, America has succumbed to the politics of small solutions and low expectations. We don't try to solve big problems we face. In fact, we don't even talk about the large problems we face any longer. And as a nation, I believe that America once again needs to be unapologetic about being idealistic, to dream big dreams again, to try and bold solutions once again in our country. We need to face and solve the hard and difficult problems that we encounter today, guided by the belief that, as the great bard Shakespeare once wrote, that it is noble to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. I want you to know it's no accident that I chose to be here and to be invited at Howard University today. Howard University happens to be a place of commitment to generational responsibility. Doing my research about this university, I want to share with you a story that I discovered that even not many people at Howard University knew about the creation of this great institution. 140 years ago tomorrow, on November 17th, 1866, 30 members of the First Congregational Society of Washington, D.C., got together in a small rented room in the city in a place called Judiciary Square to speak about their future and their generation. The Civil War had just ended in our country, torn us apart. They came together in that room to discuss a dream they had, that one day Washington, D.C. would have its own institution to train the next generation of black preachers. They believed it was their responsibility to help create opportunity for the first generation free of slavery. Most of the 30 people gathered that day believed that such a school would only be possible in the distant future. But one member of that gathering, one individual, a man by the name of Henry Brewster, stood up and asked a very simple question. He said, "Why not now? Why not now? Why not build the school now? We have a whole generation," he said, "of young Americans to educate, and we can't afford to wait any longer." Henry Brewster issued a challenge to the other 29 people gathered in that rented room on Judiciary Square 140 years ago tomorrow. "Who among you," he asked, "will stand up and lead us?" And then came the response from the other 29. All of them said, every single one of them stood up and said, "We will lead," all 29. That very day, they voted to create this university. On March 2nd of 1867, of course, Howard University was officially born in many ways. But in fact, the university was conceived on November 17th, 1866, when one person stood up and called his generation to do greater things. Henry Brewster knew his audience, and they knew him. He understood the deep well of talent in that room that was just waiting to be called, waiting to be summoned to a higher purpose. It didn't just happen because it was a good idea either. It happened because those 30 people took responsibility for creating a world they wanted to see in their lifetime.